Hey everyone, this is Josh here at Lasting Light Media. If you don't know me, obviously, because I'm not on most of the things that we do, I'm usually behind the camera, but I run most of this channel. And here today I have with me everyone's favorite host of Lasting Insight, Travis. How you doing, Travis?
I'm doing good. That comment's probably debatable. Let's be honest. There's so many other people that are over on nerd culture that are getting way more love than me. I'm just there. So, but I'll
and,
take it.
and speaking of nerd culture, this is our first collaboration with Nerd Culture. We are doing a
About damn time.
two-part review of a very, very highly uh,
Regarded.
sure.
Is that a good term? I mean,
I
highly
don't know.
regarded. I mean,
Um,
we're going to get in some controversy
yeah,
about it. I
yeah. I
know
was
it.
going to talk about a very controversial game, but a very looked forward to game for the last several years. The Last of Us Part Two. If you haven't seen the first half of this review we're going to do, you can go check that out over on Travis's channel, Nerd Culture. And today we're going to do the second half of the video, getting into the rest of the conversation, getting into our overall thoughts and thoughts on the rest of the franchise and where it could go from here potentially, or if it should end, who knows. Um,
And full disclosure, the first part to that video will be in the link down below. So make sure to go check
yes,
that out. We
yes,
try
yes,
to make
yes.
it as easy as possible for you guys.
So without further ado, let's just get back into this conversation and start talking about what we overall thought about the direction that they went with in The Last of Us Part 2.
I want to start off with the fact that, like we said earlier, this gameplay blatantly, yes, we have the different enemies and whatnot, but I want to talk about how it decided to execute having the first half be gameplay
Ellie.
as Ellie,
Yeah.
and then the second half being with this new character Abby.
Yeah.
I would explain who Abby is, but I think through context we'll
Yeah,
understand as we get there.
We can
But
get kind of run through the story. Yeah.
yeah, so I would say with Ellie, roughly the first half that you get from her, you know, generally what happens is the fact that we are left with it's been a few years and everything. Of course, Joel is still alive and with her, but then as things progress, Abby and her troop,
Yeah.
her group gets
Wolves, yeah.
introduced, and they I think they said that they were fireflies, but they're not anymore.
Yeah, so they're formed from a few of the last remaining fireflies.
Fireflies, but they don't
But
call
they
themselves that.
no, and I don't actually know if that's 100% whether I think they're a few the ones that we focus on were fireflies that drew into
Yeah,
this other crew. But
yeah.
those are the ones we focus on, yeah.
Yeah. So where the story is that Joel and Ellie are just trying to live a normal life in Jackson, and just going out on patrols and stuff. There's not much going on there. There is with Ellie. I think they try to focus on a very internal conflict that she was
Yeah.
dealing with more than anything else, while
Yeah.
Abby was the external force that was introduced as a killing blow to Ellie's external
Yeah.
force that would cause them to
Yeah.
run
Yeah.
ram heads,
Yeah.
because Abby was the force that,
Yeah, we're
spoiler alert.
we're introduced to it through Ellie's point of view. So yeah.
Yeah. So Abby is introduced as part of this group that used to be the Fireflies, and they know that what Joel did and deprived him of the cure. And Abby has her own personal means for why she doesn't like Joel. So she takes it in her hands. They go out and they find him, and they basically kill him, and that
Yeah.
sets Ellie on a revenge
Yeah.
path of hunting her down and trying to get to her.
Yeah.
And I think my main thing was, I don't know how you feel, but starting about there was a big
There's a
reaction to
lot
that.
a lot of angry people.
Yeah, a lot of people were upset at the fact that very early on they just killed Joel off.
Well, before we get into that, I'll just touch on it quickly. First of all, to anyone that's hasn't played the game and just because the story leaked out months before the game came out, so like a bunch of stuff, all this stuff leaked out before the game, which got people angry because they didn't want to play it, which is why people canceled their pre-orders and all that stuff. If you haven't played the game yet and you're mad about it, play the game. Just
play the game.
Forget about you whatever you saw. Just play the game.
Focus on it as a story. I
Yeah.
know that one of your favorite characters is gone, but trust me, there's something else there.
Yeah, So I was I kind of knew it was gonna happen. I didn't like read anything. I was just like, he's gonna die. It's
To be honest, I mean, I'm right there with you. I
I don't
kind of
even, I
thought
didn't expect it to happen then, 2 hours into the game.
that was my thing. I expected him to die off, but I thought it was going to be in a long-term sort of way because I'm like, this is going to be a story that transfers to Ellie. But I didn't
Yeah,
think, like you said, it was going to be
right,
like
right
that
at the
so quick.
yeah,
When it happened, I was so against it in my head of there's no way they're doing it right now.
yeah,
That when she was about to like go to finish him, I was like, no, 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 someone's gonna run in, right? Hold on,
yeah.
where's it now?
I was like waiting for something to happen. So like
Yeah,
someone was
like you
gonna
know
get
how they do a
shot.
last minute
Yeah,
save
yeah.
where like a stray bullet
I'm
comes
like,
and everybody from
yeah,
Jackson's there. I'm like,
yeah,
where's the cavalry?
yeah. When she started raising that golf club for the final time for the final blow, I'm like, oh my god, it's gonna happen. They're gonna
Yeah,
kill him
it's
right
like they're
here.
gonna do it, which I think is good because they
Yeah,
really in this game. I think they play against
they
expectations very
yeah,
hard.
this game does that, and it makes you feel what it wants you to feel at every second.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And they take some bold steps
Oh yeah,
to the fact where you either hate it or you like it, but
yeah,
but it makes
yeah.
you pick a side.
It makes you think, and it makes you question everything you think you know.
Yeah. So let's get into the first half talking about Ellie. So obviously Ellie overall gist is she goes out on a revenge path and everything, and of course she's with her. She has a company along the way with good friends, but then
Dina
also
and Jesse, yeah, yeah,
Dina is specifically a love interest
yeah,
for her.
yeah,
And then we kind of have it where she's basically conflicted because of the fact that she wants to go out for revenge, but it's one of those things where it's like you have all this other stuff, like home
yeah,
has been in front of you this entire time sort of situation, but
yeah.
dolled up in a nice way. I was just curious to you, like what your opinion was on how they executed that and all the kind of nuances that they put towards her personality as a character.
So the way I see this game is that the two halves of the game are about two different things. The first half is a revenge story, and the second half
Mhm.
is a story about revenge. If that makes sense. Um,
Uh, I think I follow you.
yeah, it's
Maybe if
kind
you
of
elaborate a little bit more,
yeah.
I'll be able to
The
pick up.
first half is kind of like a traditional like revenge story, like a going after the person you want to get. The second half is kind of the more ethical and
Oh,
thematic.
I just
I
got
get
it.
yeah
A
yeah yeah
story about
yeah
revenge.
yeah
Yeah, I
yeah
get
yeah.
you now. I see.
So yeah, but yeah, so when we're following her for the first half, it's very much we are in the mindset of her because we've played the first game. We, grew to care about and love Joel, despite
Mhm.
obviously whether you agree with what he did at the end of the game, don't agree, whatever. We get into more of that later in the game, whether it was right or wrong. But it makes you you get a reaction out of it, out of Joel dying, which is what makes you as the player want to go on this journey with Ellie and be angry at Abby
Yeah.
and want to kill her.
And I would
Um,
say real quick, when that did happen and we went on that route, I adamantly thought that the whole game was just going to be that.
yeah,
Like it was going to be a revenge.
that's what everyone thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I'm just like, okay, cool. But the fact that it did twist, I was like, I didn't
yeah,
expect it. So I kind of
yeah,
enjoyed it, but I was a little confused.
yeah. And so I really loved Ellie's story. When I first finished the game, I'll get into this when we get to her. But when I was like, I loved it. I loved Abby more. I loved Ellie more because it's Ellie, so obviously I have to love Ellie more.
Yeah.
But as I thought about the game, I'm like, I think Abby's story might have been better or whatever. But but Ellie's story was really great, and I love that they kind of almost made her um, a second Joel, but like taking a different path, if that makes sense. She's she
I mean,
follows in a lot of the same footsteps as Joel.
I can see as a person, especially since she's kind of like his daughter in a
Yeah,
sense, I think she's learned from him. So I think even at her still young age, I mean,
yeah,
she's still young. I think she has a sense of wisdom to her that she
yeah,
tries to tap into that Joel has given her, which I
yeah,
think is like really opens at the end because she kind of fully
yeah,
understands. I think Joel did that for her,
yeah,
in a sense. I do want to talk about real quick. I think there was a lot of people that had an issue with the fact that they, not that she was like her sexuality wise
yeah,
was in the direction that it went. I think people were just like, why do we have to focus on this so much when we can get like to the story? I
yeah.
honestly thought they did it the right amount, and I thought
Yeah.
they did it well, to be
It's,
honest.
I mean, I'm not going to get into everyone can have their own opinion. But I mean, I think nobody would care if she had a boy love interest. If she had a male
Yeah.
love interest, some people just wouldn't have
No,
cared. But
I'm not saying that. I'm saying
yeah, 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 yeah,
people didn't care what her sexuality was. It was the fact that like some people felt like
it's
they
just too
lingered
focused
on
on.
it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like they lingered on it for maybe a
Just
little too long.
yeah, I didn't mind it. I mean, it's just it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's just in a movie you wouldn't have time for so much development of of that
Yeah,
side
we're
story.
so
But this
used
is
to
like
like kind of planting the seed. Being,
yeah,
that's what it is. Let's move
yeah,
on to the next part.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But this is like no, this is this part of the story. We're gonna
yeah. Let's take the
touch on
time.
this and yeah. So there's probably like a good 2+ hours, 3+ hours in this whole 20-something hour, 25-hour long game, which is insanely long.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's I had no problem with how long this been. That was actually some of my favorite parts of the game, the relationship between those two.
yeah. We're gonna when we get into this, there's a lot of relationship
Yeah,
things that are
that's
addressed
I
for both
love.
sides.
Yeah,
I thought somebody even said this in comparison. There's the Ellie and Dina relationship, and then there's the Abby and Isaac relationship.
yeah.
And then somebody made the comment saying, in comparison to what we saw from the two, I love how they really got to the nitty gritty with Abby and Isaac, but they kept everything pleasant for Ellie, and you know what I mean. Like they went an extra step further for them. I'm just like Jesus, why was that creatively a choice? That's one of my biggest things. I'm like, why did we have to see that? I'm just
Okay,
curious.
all right.
So we'll get to that
I
in
don't
a
think
minute.
you
But
ever need
overall,
to see. I don't ever think that's something you need to see
I
in a
don't
video
think
game.
so. You know what? Fuck it. Let's address it now
Okay.
because I want to talk about it. So basically, there's a part in the game where when you're playing as Abby and you're doing her first half, she has a love interest, which is basically Isaac, who's somebody that's been there with her ever since she was
It's
like a
her
kid, like her
ex-boyfriend. Yeah, yeah.
ex-boyfriend, but like best friend. And then they've kind of had this thing where they have this relationship, but they don't really want to acknowledge it, that sort of thing. And then until one point in the
There's
story,
a sex scene.
there's a sex scene. It's so heated where they start off with a fight and then it turns into aggressive, just. And when I was playing it, I was like, okay, I see where this is going. I've seen this in films.
That's the
Fine.
thing. It wasn't that it happened; it was that it kept going for a
Yeah,
good
that it
minute.
kept going. And the fact that they showed so much, like
Yeah, I'm
the
like,
second they went and all of a sudden there was like a nip slip, I was like, whoa, okay.
the part
There it
that
is.
I kind of started laughing a little bit when it ended because I was like it's not like bad. Like I was like emotionally invested in the characters and all that. But like when I thought about it, I'm like somebody had to sit and render and animate
Yeah,
this,
yeah, yeah.
and
Somebody had to be in a motion capture suit
yes.
behind somebody going, oh, oh. I'm just like, boy, I hope you're getting paid.
That was probably a good several months of work just for that.
Yeah. He's just coming into work for like the fourth week. Just like, all right, you ready to do this
Yeah.
again?
If I had to say I had any major problem, and I'll say right off the bat, I have almost no problems with this game. But if I had any problem, it would be just I didn't need to see that.
Yeah. It was just that was like I can understand that they have a relationship that they're trying to
Yeah.
like acknowledge again and rekindle. But I think that like that why did that have to be so aggressively put in front of us? I just didn't
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Um, but that we'll get more into Abby in a second. Let's now rewind back because I
Yeah.
just had to
So
address that. So
yeah.
talking about
So
Ellie overall,
the relationships. Yeah.
yeah, I think it was well done. I don't think it was much of a conflict with like other people that was in her troop because it was kind of something that was like there was a sense of they didn't want it to be like a whole thing about sexuality and like being shut out because it seemed like most people were open to it. So
Yeah.
like that wasn't like really an issue. It was just the fact that she knew who she kind of was as a
Yeah.
person and then she was finding a love based off of that.
Yeah.
And I think it was really sweet
Yeah.
that she kind of had somebody to care and fight for
And
even after Joel got
and
taken out. She still had somebody to
to
be
get
with.
into some of these other characters, because something that this one does, the first one did. The first one's just Joel and Ellie. I mean, it's really almost just Joel because Joel is the
Yeah.
main character you play as. This one is, and you get to know Ellie really well, but this one is you're fully on as Ellie, and then you're fully on as Abby. But this one you get to know Jesse, you get to know Dina, you get to
Yeah.
know even Tommy a little bit more.
Tommy. Yeah, Tommy played a big role.
Yeah.
A pretty
So
big role.
this has more of a kind of a wider cast of characters, kind of a trio, if you will.
Hmm.
So I really liked that about it, and I thought they would be my least favorite part of the game. I thought Dina would just be this random love interest I wouldn't really care about. Be like, okay, just get back to the story. She's one of my favorite parts of the game. I thought she was awesome. I thought she was really interesting, and there's a lot more to her story and who
Hmm.
she is as a character than I ever expected to be. So I was really, really impressed with her. Jesse was really cool. He was a really fun character that is kind of
Yeah.
the I
And
don't
he was
yeah,
likable because he was
yeah,
stern, but he was never a dick.
yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, he's just someone who you can have fun with him, and also he's a really reliable, loyal character too.
Yeah. And then straight up, Tommy was just a badass,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah, Tommy was
Like
awesome.
the amount of times
Um,
that you
and
were
I yeah,
fighting on the opposite side, and then like that scene with the sniper, and then you turn out
yeah,
it's Tommy. I was like,
yeah,
oh man, this boy's
yeah.
good.
I didn't even realize that was Tommy until
Oh, I didn't
yeah, yeah,
either.
yeah. When
Yeah, and it's weird because like you're being faced with like there's a sniper, you got a bob and weave who's like
yeah,
really shooting at you. Like he hit me a good few amount of times,
yeah,
and the fact that I just didn't think. I never bothered to ask the question, who is this? I was just like, all right, get the sniper, get the sniper. So the fact they revealed it at the end, I was like, Jesus, I need to think more. Holy crap. That should have been obvious.
yeah,
But I thought that was really cool. But I would agree that Ellie's side of the story, I think she has a lot of reliable characters like in
yeah,
her roster and a lot of people that really paint a better picture for her and give her a good story arc and whatnot. I do like her relationship. I like the fact that even though they take the person that we thought would be her sole reason for living out of the picture, they give her another reason to live, which
yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
Um, and it was one of those things where it's like it just played the same story of she has something to fight for, and
yeah,
now it's a matter of do I want to risk a happy life and settling down for revenge?
yeah.
And there's a big duality
Yeah,
with that.
yeah, yeah, and we can get all into that. We can get to the kind of parallels with Abby's story, but
Yeah. So, and
um,
that being said, I want to get into Abby's story
yeah.
then real
So
quick.
it we can get to that part where it gets to, and I when you were, I remember you asked, you're at the aquarium, or not the aquarium, you're getting close to the theater, and you're like, is it almost over? It feels like the story's getting to this climax. I'm like, buddy, you got a long way to go.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
but to be fair, mine was just the fact that like I was like doing videos along with them, so I'm sitting there going like, how much work do I have?
like you have another half of a game to play.
But I adamantly felt that. I adamantly felt like how it was going because in
Yeah.
my head before I
Yeah,
started
it
playing
felt.
as
I
Abby,
felt that
I
too.
thought, yeah. So
The only
that's why
thing
I thought
is,
it was going
like,
to end
that
early.
takes place like maybe like 12, 13 hours in. I'm like, this is a shorter game than I expected. Like it feels like it's coming to an
Yeah,
end. We're getting this climax, and like cuts to Abby, and we're like, what's happening? And then it
yeah.
goes,
Playing against the expectations
yeah, and
again.
it goes day one. I'm like, okay. And I didn't realize until it got to like day three. I'm like, oh, we're doing this entire story again from Abby's perspective. I didn't even
Yeah,
realize, like, I thought it was just gonna be a quick flashback. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, so that whole, before we get into Abby, the whole thing, where you're in the theater and the big confrontation happens, and Ellie kills a pregnant woman, and like all this crazy stuff goes down.
who
Um,
I didn't like that lady, by the way, at all. My full disclosure, I don't even remember her name. All I know is she had an
Maul, yeah,
Maul.
yeah,
I'm gonna get. There's no reason for me to say this. She had an irritating face to me, and she never had anything entertaining to say. She was always, "I have a problem with you." I'm like, dude, get out of here. I will shoot you. Jeez, go
um,
proceed.
but yeah, I loved all that stuff they were doing. They were kind of showing Ellie is starting to get into like villainous territory where she's
Yeah, there's a
and
line she's putting in the
yeah,
sand, and she's starting to cross it.
and it's kind of, it makes me. I mean, obviously, I don't know how you feel about the ending of the original game where Joel kills other people to save Ellie, but
I loved
other
it. Full
yeah, yeah,
disclosure, I loved it.
yeah,
I
yeah,
thought it was fully justified.
yeah. And I'm mixed on it, but it's the whole. It goes into that whole same thing as what I was talking about earlier. That it's paralleling, kind of. She's taking some things. We're seeing similar themes from her story and her character that we saw with Joel. Is that how far are you willing to go? What line are you willing to cross? And
Yeah,
she's
it's
doing,
it's a it's a matter of how far can I cross the line with still having the option to turn back,
yeah, and
like to
that's
be the person I was.
yeah, and we'll get obviously into this with 100% with Abby, but one of the main themes of the game is that there are no heroes and there are no villains in this world
Yeah,
and in this
everybody
story.
has their goods and their
It's
bads, and
yeah,
it's just about you, about who you seem to stick with, and
yeah, it's
they
about
really leave it up
perspective.
to yeah.
Yeah,
It's very strongly about perspective, and
yeah,
I want to get into that with Abby if you don't
yeah,
mind.
yeah. Let's go.
So I think what they did with Abby, with giving her the backstory, basically saying how she has this rage towards Joel because her father was one of the surgeon in the room that was going
Yeah,
to perform the operation, and then Joel killed her, so she has this personal vendetta. I understood that they were trying to give you this new character in order and be like, this is her backstory, so that way they could justify and maybe you could reason with her. I personally thought, even with after all that, they were really trying to push for me to try to understand her and take her side, but I still was just like, I don't think your side's good enough. Like, I'll play as you, and I don't think you're half bad of a character, but I still don't think your reason for killing Joel, like, I can't get behind it. Like, so he killed your dad, fine, but like, it really turns into Abby and Ellie are the same because they're both
Yes. Yeah,
daughters that
100%.
lost a father.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only way, that's the only place that they connect. And I'm
But
like, all right, if that is the case, then I'm picking Ellie every day of the week.
yeah, but that's the thing. It's like you can feel that way, whatever. But like you look at the reason she did it, the reason she killed Joel, but you go back and you look at the reason that Joel killed those doctors, and it's like you can say either of them are justified or not justified. And it goes, the reason we say that about, we wouldn't say that about Joel if this was the first game. Like,
It's true.
yeah, it's like the
It's
reason
about who
yeah,
you are as a
because
person. Yeah.
we had the whole perspective of Joel for the first time, so we got to
Yeah.
love him. But if
So,
we got a whole game about the doctor, then
yeah.
we would feel differently.
So here's my question really quick about that though. So when you have the two deaths where it's like Joel's decision and then Abby's decision, like about like, why she did what she did to Joel.
Yeah.
Me personally, I think
Yeah.
Joel's decision was justified, and I don't give really a single shit about Abby's side. Like, no offense, you lost your daddy. Boo hoo. This is
Yeah.
the bad world you live in. So I just want to know, like, where did you kind of see both sides? Did you lean more towards one or the other?
I mean, the whole point of the story is to, like I said, it makes you feel what you want, what it wants you to feel, and the
Yeah,
whole first half is about, it's blind rage, basically. It's blind anger and just
very much so.
you hate these people because they did this thing to the person you love.
Yeah.
And then as you get to understand Abby, I think it really does a great job, at least for me. I mean, I still, by the end of it, I was like, I still don't like Abby, but I'm like, do I not like her because I don't like her, or do I not like her because she killed Joel? And when I kind of asked myself that, I'm like, I think I just can't get over the fact that they killed Joel. So when I kind of stepped outside, I'm like, and just kind of looked at it from more of an objective point of view, just kind of, which is what they want you to do. They want you to be like, there are no blind loyalties you should have. This is just perspective of these, perspective of them, and when you look at it all, I think it's really just a lot of complicated issues,
Yeah.
which is what the world is. So
Yeah, I would agree. And I also think because of the fact that you play the second half as Abby, and then it's like now you're on her end going after the person you were just playing
yeah,
as, which is Ellie. When you get into those conflicts where it's literally you're as Abby duking it out with Ellie, they really the game likes to present you with conflict of interest
yeah,
thematics, where it's you're attacking the side that you have such a strong bond with, so you feel more conflicted as a character. And
yeah,
I think that's meant so that way you can kind of share a little bit more of how the characters are feeling. So it's very interesting that they decided to go that route. As far as since you said it on the aspect of like, how much do we really like Abby? I think I was with you. I think I was a little bit towards the sort early on. I was like, she killed Joel. I don't really care about her reasoning why she did it and everything.
yeah,
I just don't care. She just like whiny, like I don't care. But then as I got to know her
yeah,
through things that she did later on in the game with um trying to like, she started having the mentality of like she had so much darkness in her heart that she was able to open her eyes and realize that and then try to change for the better. But then it was like then it was like the world telling her you're never going to be more than what you are, people doubting her, and she's just trying to like tell herself like it's not for you, it's for me, I can be a better person. That's when I started getting in touch with her, going, all right,
yeah,
I can respect that a little bit.
yeah.
I can respect the change you're trying to
And
make for the sake of trying to save yourself.
it was when they got towards the end of day 3, and you start to realize it's like Abby is kind of, she's not doing on the same journey as Ellie. In a sense, she's kind of going in a different direction. Like Ellie is killing anyone and everyone in her path to kill Abby. Abby let her friends go. Abby gave her an opportunity to escape twice because she wanted to kill Joel, and that was it. She did not want to kill anyone else. And
which I could respect
Yeah,
actually.
yeah,
Well, once that was better painted, I was like, she's not a mindless killer. It's like kill
yeah,
them all, like
yeah,
being a dick. She was like, she had a sense of morals to her. Like,
yeah,
this is my goal. Don't let my rage take over. Just do the job and walk away.
yeah.
So I could
And
respect her for that.
and about Abby's journey, it's when it plays into the end of the game. But we'll get to that in a little bit. But when you kind of see how after we get past the Joel death scene again, and she's still just as angry, and it hasn't helped her, and it hasn't changed anything, and her
Yeah,
dad's still dead, and her
yeah,
ex-boyfriend is still her ex-boyfriend, and she's still turned herself into basically a human weapon for
yeah.
one to kill one person, and now she killed him, and now she's basically alone in the world.
Yeah. What I
um
thought was really interesting, real quick, now that you bring that up, I thought it was very interesting that they try, like, with that, they made Abby and Ellie similar because they are tormented by the same thing.
yeah,
Ellie's tormented by the fact that she witnessed Joel's death and she lost a father, basically, and Abby's tormented because she made decisions, like you said, that she thought
yeah,
was going to help her, but really it
yeah.
torments her still. So they're both being tormented by the same thing. So there's like, it's one of
And
those things where they're on opposite sides of the wheel, but they have so much in common.
yeah, they're kind of like almost like going in this crossing paths of
Yeah,
stars.
constantly
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
interweaving
yeah.
and
And it's
stuff.
and
Yeah.
then especially when it comes into it, and we'll get to these characters. Some of my favorite, I think my favorite character, my new favorite character is Lev. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah, he's
Thank you. I was trying to
yeah,
remember his name,
yeah.
to be honest with you, but he is
Um,
a good character.
it's just that whole story is really cool because it's a giant parallel to Joel and Ellie from the first game.
Yeah.
And we get to see that Abby's kind of getting this second chance through this little kid that
Yeah.
she found, and it's exactly the same as what you saw with Joel and Ellie. Like Joel
Hmm.
started doing these terrible things in those 20 years that we didn't see leading up to the game, and he became this kind of almost amoral person, and then he found this second chance through Ellie, and now Ellie has lost Joel, and Ellie is kind of becoming that external force that was against them the entire first game.
Yeah. So what I will say, based off of that dynamic, it's very obvious. I did see that they were trying to make a parallel
Yeah,
because they're trying to like pass the torch in a way. I think
yeah,
that was a big thing with this game, is a passing of the torch. So they're trying to give this origin story to this kind of dynamic duo that they
yeah.
make with, Abby and Lev. The one thing I will say, but if I had to say in comparison though, yeah, I can see the parallels, like how Abby is Joel, Lev is Ellie, and how they kind of come together. But the reason why I like the first one so much with Joel and Ellie is because of the fact that he was reluctant. He did not want anything to do with her. I feel like Abby, just because they saved her, he was so willing. She was so willing to be like I kind of want to protect you guys. Like I felt like that was just kind
I
of
don't think she
jumps.
was. I don't think she was at first.
I'm be honest with you.
It was more
They
of a just.
save you and you
It
run
was
for your life, and then she's decided to go back to check on them. And this is her just like, now she's deciding to be a nice person.
yeah.
Like, I get it. I just felt it was a little bit more of a leap. I liked the aspect of, I don't want,
I
like, push back
I
until you just can't help it.
I liked it in the sense that like we got to see like she's basically shredded herself of all of her humanity up to this point,
Yeah.
and so we get to see her kind of see someone reach out and help her for the first time, and so she gets a little bit of
Oh,
that
you
back.
know what?
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Um.
The fact that she's not used to that, so it's like something that she can't let go.
Yeah.
That's a
Um.
very interesting point.
Yeah. And I really the more when I first finished the game, I was like, I think do I not like Abby or do I love Abby? Because I'm just like, she's a really interesting character. But
Yeah.
for some, I think about it, I'm just like, do I feel this way because of what you did to Joel? And I still can't let go of that. But that's kind of the whole point of the game, is to let go
Yeah.
of things. And I thought about it, I'm like, the more I think about this game, then I'm still thinking about it now. I'm like, every time I think back, I'm like, Abby's a really, really interesting character, and Abby and Lev is a really interesting
Yeah.
duo. So yeah, I love that whole thing that they were doing with those two characters, especially how it plays into the end of the story, which we'll get to.
Yeah, what we'll get to in just a sec. The last thing I want to touch up on, because we got into it, explaining Lev. If you don't mind, explain Lev a little bit more, and then how do you think you enjoyed him as a character?
He was awesome. I loved what he brought to the story. I loved what he brought to Abby as a character. I
Is
loved
it
what
just
he
because
brought
he
out
has
of
the
her.
Joker scars? Yeah, you want to know how I got these?
I also love that he kind of had this. He also had his own demons. Like you look at
Yeah, for like a
um,
little kid too, and
yeah,
everything is
the
crazy.
relationship with his mother, that he's kind of like has this loyalty
Oh
to his
yeah,
mother, but he doesn't want anything to do with this cult anymore.
yeah,
And but he can't really like he's like, you know, a little kid. It's like it's their parent. They want their parent to be their parent. So
Again, and again, it plays into he's like Ellie in a way
yeah,
because of the. It's
yep,
weird. It's a triangle because Abby is like Ellie in so many ways based off what they lost in their mindsets, but Lev is like
yeah,
Ellie in the fact that like he's got family that he loses, but in a
yeah.
different way. So he knows that loss, and there's
And
that sense of being alone.
Abby is like Joel from the first last.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's just yeah.
Also, real quick, do you think they just adamantly like decided to be like, oh, she's like a weapon master because they needed they just wanted her to be bulky so she could be
Well,
like the
no,
guy
because
of the
the
group?
whole idea of it is that when you play in the flashbacks, which we haven't even talked about the flashbacks yet, but when we get that first flashback of her when she's with her dad and he saves the draft, like she's like a normal sized little like a 17-year-old girl, like she's not like buff or anything. The
Yeah.
reason she gets jacked up is because her dad's killed and she decides she
Oh,
needs to
she
be
makes
able
it
to
her
get
vendetta.
like
Yeah,
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 it's
yeah.
like she basically gives up everything in her life so she can get strong and
Yeah.
find this person.
I understood that. There was a part of me, and I still think this, that was like, I get that. And they gave that explanation enough so that way
Yeah,
you can be like, this is why she is the way she is. But I think that was just a colorful way of it being like, we know we need a strong adult and then a child. How do we make her a strong adult? You
it was
know,
a smart way to do it though.
it was pretty smart, but I just love how that was really what the mindset was. Like, we want this and this. How do we get this?
True, true.
And then there is a drastic change at the end with her
Yeah,
that
yeah,
surprised me.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
and that's going to go into
That's
like how
also part of
it's going to go.
how I made me feel about her as a character when we see how she kind of what happens to her at the end of the game.
Yeah.
But
So back to Lev really quick. I thought I enjoyed him too. I thought it
one
was a
one
little eerie.
one scene with him I love is when you're on top of the sky wooden bridge thing, whatever
Oh
it's
my
called.
God, dude. Oh boy. Yeah, you're thousands of feet up, and she's got like a problem with heights and everything.
That was terrifying.
Also, as a side note, again, this is another like in-game mechanic. Since she had a problem with heights, you notice how when you would like look over ledges and it was really tall, it would like you kind of do the tunnel vision effect.
Yeah.
If you do that and then just take the camera and whip it around, look at her face.
Why?
They do an animation where the second she's locked into a position where she's experiencing vertigo, you whip it around and her face is this. And then I swear to God, what I did, I kept the camera on her face and I walked out of the position and it's so ungradual. She's like, okay.
Oh man, there's so many
Like
great.
it's so she has just like these bug eyes. I'm like, Jesus,
The
okay.
amount of detail they put into everything is just
I
so
know.
impressive, and also
It's
just makes for great photo mode
yeah.
moments.
I think what's interesting is though they really try to play with Abby having a fear and that specifically being heights and having her to face that fear with the thing of how far are you willing to go, can you overcome what you need to overcome in order to help the others, what's important to you.
Yeah,
But also um I think it was a way for them to try to humanize her more, to be like, oh, she's not unstoppable.
yeah,
She has just these blatant things that just get to her,
yeah,
and I think that helped with the her and the Lev relationship because it was
yeah.
like just like how Joel and Ellie were, where she lacks. Nev is never Lev. Lev.
Left.
Lev is good. I don't know why I called him Nev. Lev is good. So it's like the yin and yang again. They're trying
Yeah,
to do the dynamic duo yin and yang, and their synchronization as best they can. So I thought it wasn't bad, and luckily I felt they did it just enough. They weren't. It
yeah,
wasn't every 2 seconds like, oh, here she goes again with the
yeah,
heights thing.
yeah.
So I thought it was
Um,
well done.
yeah, just the whole, and then I want to get to what I said before, all the flashback stuff. So with Joel and Ellie, there's a lot of flashing back to their story and about
Yeah,
how Joel finally told, and we find out Joel finally told Ellie about what happened, and that's
yeah,
kind of what leads into why she has this strained relationship with
yeah.
Joel.
I think it was a
Um,
creative way to they use like we'll have Joel in the game, but he's not really in the game,
yeah,
sort of thing. So I thought that
and
was
they
interesting.
I like that they do a lot of that with Abby too. So we get a lot of these flashbacks to back when they were younger teenagers, like her and what's the guy's name, Isaac.
Isaac,
Yeah,
yeah,
we get a lot
Isaac.
of flashback to like them and their younger years where they're together. We get that whole scene at the aquarium or like some fairy
It was
thing.
the
Yeah,
aquarium. They were like, it was
yeah,
that
yeah,
whole thing. It was odd because it was like it seemed like it was a parallel again to Joel and Ellie because like he like Joel trying to take her out on a day
yeah,
like let her be a child and of course they're having the same experiences in the same
yeah,
sort of places
yeah.
to almost be like they kind of have the same
The
experiences in their upbringings.
that and back to Joel and Ellie, that astronaut scene was beautiful. I
Oh
loved
yeah.
it. I loved it.
I was hey that part was so beautiful. I was this close to having it be a thumbnail for one of the videos, but I'm just like I got a better one that's more action packed. I
Yes,
know
yes.
people are gonna love it.
It's so great. Also, another thing, it's a small detail. I liked seeing them kind of reanimate, like almost like reanimate some of the original scenes from the original game, just in much higher detail and higher resolution. That was
Yeah.
cool. Um, yeah.
Did you look in the mirror when you were walking through the
The what?
aquarium? When you're walking through
No.
the aquarium with Joel, there's a
Yeah.
part if you adventure around enough, you find the bathroom. There's a mirror there, and you can actually sit there and activate it, and sit there, and you can use the joysticks to move your head around and like make faces and go. Whoa. And while Joel's just sitting there behind you, going, "Are you done already?" You know, it
That's
was so
awesome.
pointless, but it's just like okay, yeah,
That's great. But yeah, I loved how they used the flashbacks and story. I also just love the overall structure of the story. I
yeah,
liked how they open it they open it kind of with kind of Joel recapping what happened, and then we get into Ellie's story, what happened and what happens to Joel, and then we're kind of flat going back to Abby, and then we're going to day one and day two and day three, and then day one and day two and day three, and then we're flashing back in between each of these days. I thought it's a technique that could have gone horribly wrong and make things really confusing, but I think the
yeah.
way they did it worked
They
almost pretty much
executed a
perfectly.
perfect memento, is what
Yeah.
you're saying.
Yes.
Here's my thing. I think they did it well too, but in comparison to how I think the flashbacks worked for Ellie's side of it and for Abby's side of it, I liked Ellie's more, and that's not a biased decision. I would dare say. I think it's the fact that overall in context, what I didn't get was like a lot of Abby's was like her as a kid and like her relationship with Isaac and how they would do stuff, and then there's clearly like something there, but she wouldn't engage with it. Like for some reason she couldn't accept it, and she'd be like, all like, I don't know, and then like wander off. I'm like, what's going on? What's the issue here? I'm confused.
Yeah.
You know, so that was the only thing. I was just like, I didn't
I
get
think
her.
the thing with that is with Abby's flashbacks is that they had to work twice as hard because they're having to do two things, whereas Ellie and Joel's flashbacks are just trying to helping are adding to the story that they're telling, whereas Abby's flashbacks are adding to her story and also introducing you to the characters as Abby because you aren't already familiar with
Oh
them
no,
and
I
developing
get
them.
that.
Yeah,
I
so
get that. It's
and
just
making
the
you
fact
like
that
them.
though they try to make a love connection,
Yeah,
but the only conflict was she was like, "No, thank you," and I'm like, "But for what reason? I don't see
yeah,
an like I don't see you're making an issue, but I don't see for what reason."
yeah,
That was just never explained to me well enough.
yeah,
That's where I think it lacked for her to the point where I
yeah.
was like, "I'm confused with you, lady."
Yeah.
But
Um, yeah. So then getting back to Abby's story. So we get through, we meet Lev, we go on this journey, we start seeing the parallels between Joel and Ellie, and Abby and Lev. We get this really great story. And then eventually we get to Abby deflecting from the wolves, and she's like, "You are my people." I love that line when she turns to Lev and says, "You are my people," when they're fighting against the wolves.
yeah,
And I just that is goes back to what I was saying about the story is about like the blind loyalty thing, and it's really interesting what they do with her character. And then I don't know what else you want to add before we get back to um, the theater, and we are basically forced to fight Ellie.
yeah. So I want to get into basically now, like wrapping up the overall story is basically the confrontations that we get both times
Yeah,
between Ellie and Abby. We'll get into this one where at the theater where you play as Abby fighting Ellie, and then
yeah,
again towards the end where it's
yeah,
vice versa. So let's talk about the theater. The theater, of course, this is at the time now where you've played as both characters, and now they've finally crisscrossed where Ellie has gone out for revenge and literally killed like practically everybody that Abby has ever loved. So now the table has switched.
yeah,
Ellie's turned into the asshole, and Abby
yeah,
is like the one that's trying to justify it and everything.
yeah,
And they start duking it out, and that's where that conflict of interest comes into play because now you're attempting to kill somebody that you're like, I don't want to kill you
yeah,
because it's Ellie.
yeah.
I love Ellie.
But
So I thought that was really interesting.
that's the other thing. It's so conflicting because it also depends on the person playing the game. Because if you're playing it and you're like, "Oh wow, I've seen Abby's point of view now," fuck Ellie. But I don't know. Can I say fuck on nerd culture?
I mean, I've said it already.
Okay.
I think it's one of the things. I think it's basically however YouTube is. I think as long as you haven't said it more than like 2 or 3 times, I think we're safe.
Okay. But yeah, so like depending on the player, someone will be like, I I've seen this entire story from Abby's point of view now, and Abby's a much better character. Ellie's basically a bad guy now, so they don't have as much of a conflict. Whereas other people are like, no, I don't care if I've seen this entire journey. It's Ellie. I'm not going to kill Ellie because Ellie's Ellie, and I don't want,
Yeah.
and I hate Abby no matter what.
That
And then
was
you have
never an issue for me. I
yeah,
once that happened, I went, "This is cool," but I know they're not going to have me kill Ellie. There's no way. So I was
yeah.
not worried about it at
I
all.
was, I was, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure.
I adamantly, I was so 100% like, no way they're gonna have me kill her. So fine, let's do this. And I was more of a, dang, Ellie, you're hard to kill.
Yeah.
Like,
Um, yeah, the whole thing. I was just like, I don't. I mean, if I got, it basically was like you got to pick a side who you rooting for, and I'm like, when it came into the thing, and you have to like you crouch up behind the theater chairs, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I have to do this if I want to
guess we're doing this.
continue the game. So I just, it's really, it was challenging because I'm like, I guess I want Ellie to win, but I need to win so I can progress through the story. But I
Yeah.
also not don't really want Ellie to kill her. So I was very conflicted, which is good because that's what I think Naughty Dog did well, which is probably what people are mad about because they don't want to feel so frustrated playing as far as the
I'm like,
characters
but
go.
then at a certain point, like, what is the point? That's the point of art in general. You go to see
Yeah.
movies because you want to be taken for a ride.
Well,
Why
I
would you
think
play a game that where
it's
it's
a
just like, oh, it was
it's
all right? Like, have
it's
something that
a
makes you want to think and be
I
like, I
think
hate it or I
I
like it.
I think it's comes down to a lot of people don't want to see they don't want their ideas about their characters challenged. They want the hero to be the hero, the bad guy's the bad guy, the hero kills the bad guy, the story.
Yeah.
Um,
And again, you got to go
and it's
against the formula to make some art, man.
and you know what? A lot of stories do that, and they do it well, and they're awesome. But sometimes you can do something different, and that's what they did, and I think it worked really
I
well.
loved that they made such a stretch because
Yeah,
I was surprised. This could have gone the very formulaic way. I'm like, I
yeah,
can see, I could call everything. Nope,
and
that didn't happen. And the
this
fact it did that, I was
it's
like, solid.
I think people when it comes to like I said, the first half is a revenge story, the second half the story about revenge. And it's
Yeah.
like I think people were playing this like they're playing this wanting to be John Wick, and this is not a John Wick type of
No,
revenge
not
story.
at all.
This is not someone killed
John
your
Wick would be
puppy.
way better at
Yeah.
stealth than I was.
This is
So
not
it's
a just
not,
someone killed somebody, you're gonna go kill them. That's a very simple story. This is
yeah,
much
yeah, yeah.
more complex. Um,
Exactly.
but yeah, so you get through that theater fight. We get the moment where Abby lets Ellie go again,
Yeah,
even
she
after
has the option to end it all there, but
like
she's like,
when
no.
you think about it, it's like Abby was well within her right to kill both Dina and Ellie right then
Yeah,
and there, but because of what Ellie just did, but she doesn't, and it
yeah.
really makes you think like, why do I hate this character still when she's done this?
Yeah, I think once we got to that point in the story after she did that, I was far enough in that after she did that, I was just like, okay, I can respect you now. And now I'm more on like
Yeah,
accepting that we're going to be kind of following her and everything because of the fact like she's
yeah,
not a mindless like kill anybody that gets in my way type of person.
and
So I'm like,
then
all right, cool.
yeah, and then she lets Dina go, and then cuts to black, and we are on a farmhouse.
Yeah, there's the whole dynamic that's like kind of like the in between where it's like time has passed. I honestly thought it might have ended there. I don't
Yeah,
know,
I
but
thought like, okay, we're just gonna have like a one cut scene, and the game's gonna be over.
yeah, it's like oh, they lived happily ever after, and then we have the other story that we don't know about until later, but they decided to paint a little bit more of a picture. So there's that
Yeah,
thing where there's like Abby's like never, I don't want to never see you again. Though, so they go their separate ways, and now they're on the farmhouse. Ellie and Dina are having a regular life with the kid and all that stuff because oh yeah, Dina was pregnant. That was the one thing
yeah,
we didn't acknowledge.
yeah.
So they have a family and everything's going well, but except the one thing that is a constant
Oh,
is
and
that
Jesse died. Didn't acknowledge that either.
oh, Jesse died.
Yeah, the dad.
Look, people are going to die. All you need to know is that these are the people in the scene. There's a baby. There's a baby, and there's Dana, and there's Ellie. They're living
Oh,
a happy life.
one other thing. Did you think Tommy died when he got shot in the face?
I thought for a second,
I was
like,
like when he came back in the at the farm, I was like, oh, he's alive. I'm like, okay.
so here's my, I see, again, it didn't like, I just didn't really acknowledge it. After he shot him, that happened so quick with everything else. I was more focused back on Ellie and Abby. When he showed up again, I was like, oh, he's still alive. Okay.
Okay.
But I wasn't like, wait, is Tommy dead too? Like, I just like, if it's not Ellie, I completely kind of like forget about him. I'm gonna
Yeah.
be honest with you. I'm like, what's going on with you? You know, but
So
they're
we're like a year later or so.
Yeah, and then they're on the farm living a happy life, but Ellie is still tormented. Then
Yeah.
Tommy comes along and gives her a proposition saying, "I found Abby," and now Ellie is in Abby's boat where it's like,
Yeah.
"I want revenge for you,"
Yep.
and then it's that thing where Dina is saying like, "We have
Now what?
something
Yeah.
here.
It's
Why
like
would you want to risk
don't
it?"
give this up. Just
Yeah,
let
why
it
would
go.
you risk this for that? So
Yeah.
she kind of is given this ultimatum. It's like, if you go,
This is
then we're
done.
not going to be here for you.
Yeah.
And inevitably, Ellie does, and then it kind of gets to the route where,
Ellie
Ellie
leaves, and we
decides to hunt her down,
yeah, and
and
then we cut back to Abby.
yeah, and then
And
Abby actually had it where she had a rough go where she was with Nev and they were kind of having the regular kind of Joel and Ellie experience, but then
yeah,
it takes a left turn where she's introduced to a new group of people off to the coast where we're at now, and they basically have been
yeah, these like hunter or type people. I don't. They're terrifying.
yeah, and
Um,
they've been captured and
yeah,
then apparently been tortured this whole time.
yeah,
And another thing is, I think, and this is going to get into the final thoughts we'll get into in a minute about the future of the game, but like it's just like so out of context. I didn't have no understanding or idea why these people just capture and torture like they do.
yeah,
But that's where they've been. So
yeah.
Ellie's put
So
into a situation where she has to hunt her down, but she
yeah,
ends up turning into a rescue mission at first.
yeah. So before we get into like the whole final fight, I like there was one scene that I really loved, just because it was like a nice little, I guess you can call it an homage to the original game where um, Abby and Lev, they go in, they are trying to call the Fireflies, and they're trying on the radio, and they finally get someone. And for the first, and I didn't notice it. I'm a big like music person when it comes to like movies and TV and games and stuff. So something I noticed throughout the whole game is that not once is the original Last of Us theme song played at all. And then,
I think it's true, but I mean, do you know the instrument that
yeah,
Gustav
yeah,
like
yeah,
plays? Like, I was
yeah.
just like when I hear that, I'm like, there's
Yeah, yeah.
Last of Us.
But there's a moment when they finally get in touch with the Fireflies, um, and that's the only moment they use the Last of Us theme. They have this like slow version of it on a guitar when it
Yeah,
finally we get to the Fireflies again, and that I thought was a perfect way to use music and like going reusing themes and stuff. I thought that was really sweet. And then obviously they get taken out of the house and captured,
yeah,
and
captured,
then
and
and
then
then we
all that
cut.
time goes
Yeah.
by.
And then we cut back to Ellie. She's arrived on the island or wherever they are. Is it an island? It looked, or she just like her.
It was just a camp
Yeah.
at some
So
place on the coast, but it is on
so
like kind of like the seashore. That's where they end
so
up.
first of all, I want to talk about Ellie's look in the final act of this game because she looks like friggin' Ellen Ripley,
She looks
and
like
it's
a strong
awesome.
soccer mom.
It's awesome. She looks
Yeah,
really badass. She has like her tattoos. She has her shorter hair. She has her like her ripped up
she
sleeves and
has
stuff.
this
She has her all her
wrinkled
weapons.
disdain on her
Yeah.
face the entire time.
She
She's like,
looks she looks like she's seen 40 years of war and she's 20
yeah.
years old.
Yeah,
Um,
given her age, they were able, like, even with her still kind of young age, they were still able to
um,
give her
so
age in a
yeah,
way.
yeah. So they have her go on a journey or a trip to looking for Abby, and one of my favorite scenes in the whole game is she gets captured, and two of these hunter people they come up, they find her, they're taunting her after
Uh-huh.
she wakes up. They let her down, and a clicker shows up,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. Gets propelled upside
yeah,
down and all that stuff.
yeah, and the way that she handles it when she's like, she just rocks herself into it and lets herself get bit so she can take the other guy out. That was so clever. I loved that they did that,
Yeah.
because they don't really acknowledge that she's immune except for like a couple moments throughout the whole game. They
Yeah,
don't,
yeah, yeah.
and that was the first time they've actually utilized her being immune for like a really cool
Yeah,
purpose.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice moment because of the fact it's like it shows you how far Ellie's come. Where it's like
Yeah,
she's seen so much that these guys, you can tell by how she's talking to them, like they don't phase her. It's just like,
yeah,
give me one. I'm gonna lead you into giving me an a small open window, and I'm gonna destroy you both.
yeah.
She is so slick. She is an assassin.
And then there's this one other thing. It's another direct parallel to Joel from the first game is when she does this in the beginning, but she does the thing where she has someone like point out on a map where they are, and then have the other person point it out too.
Yeah.
And then if they're not matching up, find them. She
Well,
does.
yeah, well, to be fair, they also did that. Like that was something
Yeah,
Joel had, but also Tommy knew that as well because
yeah,
halfway
yeah,
through the story, when you're tracking down Tommy, he was
yeah.
doing that too. They
But
both knew that. That was just passed on.
yeah, and then but there's this thing. So in the first Last of Us, when Joel gets free of that Firefly guard when they're taking him out because he's like they're gonna kill Ellie. I have to go. And he's like, nope, we're gonna escort you out with a gun, and you're either gonna die or get out of the building. And he shoots the guy in the nuts and then shoots him. She does the same kind of thing when he's like, you're gonna stop me, so I have to kill her. She does the same thing to the guy that she has
Yeah.
pinned against the tree.
Yeah.
It just shows more of the parallel that
It
she's
just
crossing this
yeah.
line. Yeah,
Now that we're at the very end of her story,
yeah,
we see how she has become
yeah,
the very much adult, the filled with experience. She's really
yeah,
it shows. That's a very good point. You can see
yeah,
through physicality and actions that she has taken a lot from Joel.
yeah,
Like
for sure.
Joel lives through her,
Yeah.
which is a
Um,
beautiful thing.
and then we get through this, like, how a bunch of houses, like this base where they're located at,
Yeah, big
where
base.
where
They got people tormenting.
I used the that stealth thing again, where I just kind of I set the clickers free and just let them roam
Yeah.
wild.
So my thing was, I noticed that was a thing, and I tried to do as much as I could, and all it did was like kind of stir them up and maybe kill one of them, and then I was like, all right, now I got to deal with the rest. So it didn't help
Yeah,
me too much. And there were a couple times I tried to sneak up to like let them loose, and they would turn around and just attack me. I'm like, dang it, I was trying to help you.
yeah, I just snuck up, let them loose, and then hid behind a tree or something, and
Yeah.
just let them all run around. Like, okay, I'm gonna sneak over there now, let the other ones go, and then yeah, it turns into like a rescue where you try to find Abby being held up, but they're like, she's not here, she's
Mhm.
out and strung up on a pole, and so you end up letting these people go, and then you get to the I don't know if it's like a shipyard or it's just like by a lake or whatever. And I get there and I'm looking around. I'm like, "Where's Abby? Where's Abby?"
I know what you're gonna say.
I
I
see
know
this,
what you're gonna say.
and I
That
see
you
this.
have hold on, to paint a better picture for everybody really
Yeah,
quick. The ending is you finally fight through everybody, you finally get to the location where they say Abby is, and you get there. It's on the sandy beach, and there's just a bunch of people practically crucified
yeah,
on
yeah.
a bunch
And
of posts. And
I'm looking
yeah.
around, and I see this one woman who's like, she looks kind of strong, and she has like a long, like a braid,
Yeah,
and I'm
they
like,
deliberately made that thing like blow in the wind. Like everybody
yeah,
else is still. She's
yeah. I'm like,
actually
I'm
giving
looking up. I'm
off.
like, can I hit triangle? Can I interact or whatever?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. And then I hear this noise behind me, and I turn around, and there's this barely alive woman,
Skinny,
like, no, like,
malnourished,
malnourished. And
short
you know what the
hair.
funny thing is?
What?
Her version of malnourished is like most people's version of
No,
normal.
literally. So here's my thing. Here's my thing. One, I appreciated that they did that because when I came in, I thought that was her too. But after it was over, I was like, they deliberately did that so they could almost 100% of the time trick everybody.
Yeah,
So that way you'd be like, oh, wow, okay. So it could
yeah,
more emphasize how hard the times have been
yeah.
for her. But then I also
Um,
played the card where, like, when I saw her, I went, they put her at woman size now. Like
yeah.
that was like their cheap little trick.
But yeah, when I did that, when I turned around, I was like, okay, I guess I gotta fight Abby. I gotta fight Abby. I see her hanging, what I thought was Abby hanging there. I turn around, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can fight Abby because I
Yeah,
see what
no,
she's
that
actually looking
you
like.
literally have this woman that has nothing left, and you're just
Yeah,
like,
and
dude,
to kind
oh
of top it
man,
all
this.
off, to top it all off, so then the second you were like, okay, I'll let you down, and then the first thing she does, she doesn't even acknowledge you. She runs to Lev. Like, that's the
Oh
only
yeah,
thing she
because
cares
she
about.
knows what's more important. You know
Yeah,
what's funny?
like,
I thought it was funny how when you see her and you don't know, it's like it's just a funny thing where like Ellie's all amped up, and then she sees that and she goes, "Oh man, I was gonna fight you. Oh man, I had some things I wanted to say, but
yeah,
now I don't even know if it's a good
yeah,
time."
yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, and they
she
let her
lets down
go.
Lev, and full disclosure, she looks awful, but Lev looks fine. He literally does
Oh,
not look at like
his
anything
hair's
happened.
longer.
Okay, fine.
I mean, he was already kind of skinny. I don't know how much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
Maybe they
just
fed him
funny.
better. I don't know.
Oh, better yet, like that's a
Or,
story. Like
you know
she
what?
just give him his meal.
They were getting food while Abby wasn't getting her daily protein
Yeah, she
bars or
wasn't getting her
whatever.
25 protein shakes and a couple of pumps. She was, huh, huh, huh. But
Um,
yeah, no. So you
so then
save her, and then
Abby leads you over to the boats. Yeah,
yeah,
and then
Abby gets Lev, and then they basically you follow her, and they go over to the boats, and of
and
course you get on the shore. There's two boats. They go to
mm,
one, you go to the other, and then there's this moment where right when Ellie's putting her stuff in, she has a flashback to Joel, and she's like, "I got to do this. I'm
yeah, yeah,
sorry, I came all this way. I have
yeah,
to do
yeah,
this."
yeah. And
And they
then you
finally
have a
do get
fight,
out.
and it's really, I didn't know how to feel throughout the whole thing. I was like, and
Yeah.
again, it's like, I love that they do that. They make you, you're not just like, oh, I have to do this because I that's what the game says to you. It's like, I don't know if I should be doing this. and
Well,
you
here's
feel
my thing.
conflicted about the whole
My
thing.
thing was I thought it was really good. The other thing was though, I didn't really care too much because of the fact that I'm not good at telling stories, but I'm aware of them well enough to know
You
from
had a
everything
feeling where it was going to
from
go.
from everything built up. I obviously knew at that point when we were fighting for the final time. I'm like, Ellie's not going to die, and Abby is going to be the next installment like of the series, so she's not going to die. It's going to, and it was, I was like, I told myself, and it happened. It was like Ellie is going to have a close call where she's going to have the advantage. She can clearly kill her, but then she's like, I can't do it. I can't be this person,
Yeah,
and that's exactly what happened.
yeah,
And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying
yeah,
I called it.
yeah,
Not everybody probably could, but it's
yeah.
still a good
And
method of storytelling.
I think it was the right decision. So yeah, we get
I
what
think it
happened.
was right too. I
Yeah,
agree with you.
and I think there's so much going on too at that time because it's not just, oh, I have to let her, I have to let this go, and I have to let her go because it's the right thing to do. But it's like you have to look at it like, if you kill her, you're doing exactly what she did to you. Or you're going to do exactly what she did to
Yeah.
Joel. What
She's
you know,
like, I don't want to be the monsters I fight.
like you're going to take away this kid's hope for, or a father, like a
Yeah.
mother figure.
Yeah.
Um, and you're gonna you're going to have thrown away your entire life just to do that, just to continue this cycle
Yeah.
of revenge. And
It's
if you
yeah.
do this, then this kid maybe will get away in a boat and then come after you in 5 years.
Yeah. I think it was more along the fact of like it's hard dealing with the loss and trying to get revenge for it, but then she's like it's even harder to learn to let things go and be at peace with stuff. And
Yeah,
I think that's what I thought was really nice to solidify an ending to Ellie's story, of that instead of looking for the fight and looking for revenge, how can she find peace, therefore she can have overall
yeah.
resolution to the
And
point where
then
she can finally have a closing chapter to her story.
and then she lets Abby go, and then it cuts away, and she's there alone, which is the thing she never wanted. She got what she never wanted through the things that she everyone told her not to do. And then we cut to that flashback of her and Joel the night before he died, which
Yeah.
pretty much explains away everything that you just said, like everything that she was feeling in that moment and why she made the decision to let Abby go, like the whole
Yeah.
forgiveness and I'm gonna try to forgive you even though it's
Yeah.
really hard.
Again, that's just played into. She had everything that she learned from Joel, and the final thing that she needed to learn in order to have like kind of a self completion is what Joel told her of learning to try to accept
Yeah,
and forgive. And then she finally did. So it's like Joel kind of finished his job in teaching her,
yeah, for
and
sure.
she was able to go on. And I thought that was very touching. I thought, and then we can get into the ending of this. I thought overall, I thought it was a nice ending for Ellie,
Yeah.
and I think where the game is going to go for
and and,
future.
and
And
she's off going back to wherever she's gonna go now.
I think
Dina's
Ellie,
gone.
she's had the closure. She's not, she's done, and I think it was a very satisfying ending for her. Like she has no other quarrels. It's just she wants to just try to live a happy life. I feel like she's going back to wherever Dina is
Yeah.
to settle down. So I love that she can kind of finally have a happy life, even though she's been hit with so much like unfairness throughout. And then of course, obviously, they're doing that for the fact that we feel like we have such a sense of closure for her that now we can let Abby and Lev drift off into their own adventure and stick with them now, since we feel like we've been through them through their thick and thin.
Yeah,
So
for
I
sure.
think they did that really well of passing the torch as best as they could, even
I
though
think the thing is, I
it
think
was
if
controversial.
they were to make a Last of Us Part Three, which I don't even know if they should or shouldn't. I don't know how I feel about that.
I think if
Um,
they did, I don't even think they should call it The Last of Us. I think it should be something else, because it should be. I think The Last of Us was more for a Joel and Ellie thing.
the thing
That's
is,
over now.
I think that's the whole thing. Is though it's not though. I think The Last of Us is meant to be more about the world and about the stories
You
they
know
tell.
what? Fine, I agree with you, because that's a good point. But Jesus,
No, but you think about it. It's like the first
I
game. Like
know. I mean, they call it The Last of Us, not Joel and Ellie.
everyone was mad about because they're like, oh, we wanted a Joel and Ellie story, but it's like that's what the
How much?
first game was about, but that's not what this game's
Man,
about.
how idiotic would you feel if like when the game does come out, it's like they changed it from The Last of Us to Abby and Lev Part One, and you're just like, I was like, I called it.
Oh man.
But
Um,
overall, your final thoughts. What do you did you like how it ended for their Ellie and Joel's, like their side of the story, their closing chapter, and are you
yeah,
excited to see what's going to happen in the future?
I loved it. Yeah, this is as perfect as you can get as far as video games go for me. Obviously, I don't know. My word carries less weight than some others because I'm not a huge gamer. I mean, I'm a gamer, but like I play.
It's not even about being a gamer. This is more of like
Yeah,
a movie analysis than
yeah,
anything else. So
yeah.
it's
True, true.
storytelling.
Yeah.
It's everything.
But it's this as far as just storytelling in general. Like this is better than any movie I've seen probably in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And
More
it's
like a TV series at this
yeah,
point, given how
yeah,
long
and
it
it's just
lingers.
this might be my favorite game of all time. It really might be. I think I'm gonna play it again for a really concrete.
There's the new game plus, so you can have. Oh, there you go. You can get all your skills that way because you can walk in with your extra
But
stuff.
yeah, it's just this is everything I want from a gaming experience. It is giving me compelling story and complex characters and a lot of thinking and a lot of and it combines it with a really cool gaming experience that is fun. It's challenging, but it's not like I'm gonna die every 5 seconds because I just suck at the game. It's like it's actually fun and you can develop your skills. And it's just it's a to me it's a perfect evolution of it is the I love that it's called part two instead of just Last of Us 2 because it actually really does feel like an actual part two of this world and of the story rather than just The Last of Us again. So,
Yeah. And
uh,
then are you hopeful? And then the last thought, are you hopeful for the future of where it's going to go?
I don't know where the future's going to go. I mean, we could do an Abby and Lev story, or we could leave that alone, and when we
I
can
at
do
no 100% that's what they're doing. That's
maybe.
the whole
I,
I
I
feel like that was the whole purpose of this to have a now you have a new dynamic
I
duo
think
to
if
work
they
with.
I think if they were to say maybe make this a trilogy and complete this trilogy, the natural ending would be for Ellie to maybe be able to finally get what she wanted and create a cure or a vaccine.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that would be I think that would be a good conclusion.
So you're more of a there is a future for this. There probably is going to be another one, but you're hoping maybe that will be the last closing, like the
Yeah.
closing thing to end it.
That's the thing is like I thought the first one was perfect, and then you get a sequel, and then this
Yeah,
one comes out, and I think it's better than the first one. So
yeah.
who knows?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's for the future of these games. I think it's one of those things where don't ask for too much. Just acknowledge the fact that you need to cherish what you have. So I think I'm willing to have them do another one and maybe do the whole finally putting the nail in the coffin to the overall story of The Last of Us. But I don't want it to turn to one of those things where they always find a way to keep it going, because then it's going to lose its luster,
Yeah,
and then it's going to and we the last thing you want is for these games that are so good to really die out. So if they do have plans for the future, I can't wait to see them. But I hope they don't disappoint, and I hope they don't try to just focus on money and be like, "Let's make as many of these as we can."
yeah, for sure.
So in the long
But
run,
I mean, I trust Naughty Dog to not do that.
yeah, they're
And
pretty good
I
about
think
it.
I saw that they're creating a new IP for their next game, so it'll probably be something completely unrelated to this.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that is going to do it for our excessively long review of the excessively long game, The Last of Us Part Two. Thank you for checking out Part Two of our review. If you want to check out Part One, you can go over to Nerd Culture, Travis's channel, and watch it all there. You can see all we have to say about the gameplay. But until next time, I'm Josh. This is Travis, and thank you for checking out Lasting Light Media.
And I'll say it for you because you didn't, but make sure to follow Lasting Light Media and subscribe. Like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. What were your thoughts about the game and how it ended? And also check us out on all forms of social media, especially Instagram. And yeah, you're
Yeah, do
welcome,
that.
Josh.
Do that.
Yeah, you're
Do what
welcome,
he said.
Josh.
Do what he said on the thing that I forgot to mention about my own channel.
Yeah,
I'm so bad at this.
you'll be all right. You'll get there one day. Bye, guys.